5 strange ways our brains trick us.
5.
False memories. A large portion of us are almost certain of our recollections, and why shouldn't we be? In a strange world that is changing on a day-to-day basis and often doesn't make sense, the memories of our experiences can be one of the few things that ground us in reality. However, scientists have conducted experiments on memory and found that it is incredibly easy to plant false memories. One theory given by a researcher as to the reason why we are so easily fooled is because our minds try to take in everything in our surroundings, but inevitably fail, which, as you'd probably expect, would lead to gaps in memory. To deal with these gaps, our minds automatically plant whatever false memories they think will make sense based on our current knowledge and experience. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, it gets even worse. In one experiment, researchers convinced a woman that she had been lost in a mall when she was young. Not only did she actually believe what she was being told by these researchers, but her mind started to come up with memories of an old woman at this mall that she has probably never even stepped foot in as a child. That's crazy.
4.
Earworms. Okay, no question about it, this has happened to all of us. You know how you get an incredibly catchy song stuck in your head for days at a time, but either you can't remember what the song is or you just want to get the damn tune out of your head? Well, now you have a name for this horrible phenomenon, which scientists have dubbed an earworm. The explanation some scientists give basically involves your brain getting stuck in a loop. That explains why we can't get the main verse of "Hey Mickey, you're so fine, you blow my mind, hey Mickey," out of our damn heads. And you probably remember one verse of whatever catchy song you're stuck with almost perfectly, but don't know the rest of the song quite as well. After singing the first verse, your brain tries to move on to the next, but it doesn't know the rest of the song. This is because your brain likes to go back to unfinished thoughts and will end up getting stuck in what seems like a never-ending loop as your mind will continuously keep restarting and finishing the song. After presumably struggling to get something catchy like Erasure out of their heads, a group of scientists were determined to find out how to break this spell. After a lot of study, their advice is a sort of Goldilocks philosophy. You need to focus on a cognitive activity that isn't too easy or too hard. They suggest solving anagrams or doing brain teasers or simply reading a book.
3.
Sympathetic pain. Why is it that when we see someone stub their toe on a door frame or a table, we end up wincing in pain ourselves, even though we're not the ones suffering? Or even if you're just hearing a story of someone getting hurt and you had the same experience. Well, that is what you call sympathetic pain. Researchers conducted experiments using MRI machines to test how a subject's brain reacted when looking at faces with certain expressions and when making those same expressions. What they discovered is that the brain displays the same activity in both cases. The part of the brain responsible for this is called the mirror area, and scientists believe we have something called mirror neurons, which are responsible for creating a sympathetic response to whatever story we hear. Essentially, humans are hardwired to think we're feeling the same things as other people. Essentially, a very strong version of instinctive empathy.
2.
The blame game. So this is something that everyone has been known to do. If something happens to go wrong, say at work, in college, or whatever the scenario is, we always tend to go through a list of people who were involved in said scenario to determine who's to blame for the whole situation. The problem is that we often place the blame on the wrong person, event, or object, and frequently distort reality in order to protect our own self-esteem. Imagine for a moment that you just completely failed at an important test in order to pass whatever college course you've taken. Who's responsible for your failure? Now, if you're like most people, you might explain away your poor performance by blaming situational factors. Factors such as, the room was so hot I couldn't concentrate, or we didn't learn any of this in class, our teacher or lecturer didn't prepare us for this. This is what is known as the actor-observer bias. When it comes to our own behavior, we're often too quick to place the blame on external forces rather than on personal choices or characteristics. Now, let's change the scenario up a little bit by asking what would happen if a fellow classmate fails a test. While we might focus on outside forces when it comes to explaining away negative events in our own lives, we often fall prey to an opposing problem when we're looking for the causes of other people's behaviors and failures. So what we're essentially saying is that if you fail a test, you will either blame the environment the test took place in, or you'll blame the teacher or lecturer for providing you an inadequate education. However, if a fellow classmate fails the exact same test while receiving the exact same education, you'll simply believe it's because they're stupid, or they're lazy, or that they simply didn't pay attention in class. This is what is known as the fundamental attribution error. When something great happens to us, we tend to fall victim to what is known as the self-serving bias. If you get a promotion at work, a great grade on a test, or win a medal at an athletic event, you attribute your success to internal factors. You got that promotion because you worked hard. You did well on your test because you're smart and you studied. So with all this in mind, why do we stoop so low and engage in this blame game? Well, according to researchers, it's believed that many of our attributional biases function as a way to protect our own self-esteem and guard ourselves from fear of failure, which actually makes perfect sense. And if you don't understand all of this, well, then that's your fault.
1.
Moral dumbfounding. We all have our own opinions on controversial subjects. For example, a lot of us have strong opinions when it comes to issues like murder, cannibalism, and even incest, with the majority of us considering them to be morally wrong. However, it has been discovered by researchers that when we are asked about these issues, most people's brains sit there sluggishly, unable to come up with an appropriate response, even though the behaviors in question are considered too controversial by most modern societies. This is referred to as moral dumbfounding. To put it simply, the subjects who were asked about these subjects were found to be struck dumb and unable to properly explain why they felt so strongly about the issues. Some of these scenarios are simply outrageous, as they range from a person working in a morgue who cuts off a piece of flesh from someone to take home to eat, to a brother and sister getting freaky with each other on holiday. In both scenarios, the participants were asked if what these people had done was wrong. Then they were asked to explain why. The researchers found that people felt very strongly that these behaviors were morally wrong, but struggled mightily to verbalize their reasoning. Research has not yet explained why this response occurs. It may be that society's taboos are simply ingrained into our consciousness so deeply that we feel a powerful moral drive against them, even though we cannot logically explain why.